Alrighty, everybody, please give a... Portia, are you ready? Give a warm round of applause to Portia Tung.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, we're all good. So it's an honor to be the closing keynote because it's always the most challenging part of the day. And of course, what more does a playmaker enjoy but a bit of a challenge? So everything we're about to do in the next 45 minutes to an hour is purely optional because, as you've already learned, forcing people to play is punishment. So when you're ready, and if you wish, please all stand up. Okay, this is a bit of a warm-up, I guess, before your night out in Athens tonight. So if you can just take your feet hip-width apart. Yep, and love thy neighbor, so do be gentle with them with what we're about to do. Great, so if you just take your head and slowly rotate it one way. Lovely. There we go. Who'd think you get a bit of stretching and physical care? And the other way as well. It is the heaviest bit of you after all. Lovely. Okay, so we're going to take our arms out. We'll just rotate our wrists one way, and symmetry is really important. And the other way. Okay, we're getting warm now. We're going to do some shoulder rolls back one way. Really, squish. Yeah, the shoulder blades. And then the other way. And I know what a bunch of party animals we are for tonight. So here we go. This is still the warm-up. Hands on your hips, and we're just going to rotate your hips one way. Marvelous. See, play has no age limit. That's how you keep those joints oiled. And the other way. That's it. Come on. No need to be shy. Okay. So, when you're ready, follow me. Are you ready? So hands just kind of ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Okay, that was your first go, but faster. 1, 2, 3, go. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Bravo, grab a seat.
Now they're excited.
So a crucial element of true play is safe play, fair play, and risky play, right? So for those of you who actually did that exercise, I think you have genuine potential to be change agents, right? Because if you're not doing something scary, how do we know that we're not growing, right? So thanks to Dimitra's inspiring talk about Iron Maiden today, even I might start listening to them. And I'm starting going to look at Bruce's autobiography. And the quote here from Bruce was, "All growth is a spontaneous, unpremeditated leap in the dark without prior knowledge or experience." So I think he's just summed up the way I make decisions about my life, which is fascinating, isn't it? Because that's actually how we learn, according to him. So my friends call me the playmaker, and they did say to let you know that it is going to be a bumpy ride, but hopefully it'll be a fun one. So the key thing with play is about safety as well. So like I said, you do as little or as much as you wish, but that is in direct correlation to how much you get out of today's session. So a bit about me. My name's Portia. I'm an executive and personal coach, helping senior managers and teams and groups go through organizational change. And I've discovered in my journey that it doesn't need to be painful. In fact, it can be fun and done with relative ease. One of the sayings I've come up with is play once a day to keep the doctor and priest away. So I'll leave you to think about that. So this talk is a gift for you, your colleagues, your teams, your friends, and of course, your family. I'm a bit of an Agile geek, so I like to be clear on our goals and our acceptance criteria. So here's a user story I prepared on your behalf earlier. Play for life. As a play seeker or play skeptic, you choose. I need ideas on how to play more so that we can all live happily ever after. Now, who wouldn't want that? So hopefully by the end of session today, you'll be able to raise your hand to tick off the following criteria. The first one is I have a working knowledge of play. I can explain the importance of play. I have one or more ideas to play more, and I've had fun. All good? Excellent. Okay, So this is taken as a quote from one of my favorite tube stations in London called Angel, and someone has sort of done this public service of writing meaningful quotes on this, so that's why I like going. And the one for today is, to live is one of the rarest things in the world, and most people only exist. So we're going to cover 3 particular topics today. The first one is play, and that's the bulk of today's talk, followed by a bit about the brain, and then finally your play future. So, about play. We're about to do a play assessment, and I wondered if Giannis and your team actually encouraged you to prepare for this beforehand. Did they let you know? Oh dear, Giannis, we're going to see what we can do with this group then. So, you'll be shown a series of images, and there are only 2 rules. If when you see an image, and it makes you think, "Ooh, that's really playful," then you shout, "Play!" And if you look at the image and you think, "Oh, that doesn't look like play," then you say, "Nay." The game is called Play or Nay. Are we ready to play? Yay! Okay, I can see we are a high potential group here. Excellent. Okay, play or nay? 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 Okay. Let's see what the computer says. Oh, thank goodness. Phew, you've passed the test. So what we've just done now is baseline our collective understanding of what play means. Yeah, because as Tony mentioned earlier in the panel, play and fun, by definition, is very specific to each of us. And it's important to, A, respect that, but also to recognize and know what that means. So as a play researcher, I guess I get asked 2 very common questions, most frequently asked questions. The first one is, why should I play? And normally I get asked with this kind of, why should I play? I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfectly happy. Can you not tell? Why should I play? So in the next section, we're going to cover the reasons and the research behind why it is beneficial to play. But more disturbingly and more recently, I've been getting this question. Is it okay for me to play? But of course, people don't ask me so directly because we're not friends yet. And they kind of go, well, I'm a busy person. And the most disturbing thing about all of this is that, I've been hanging out with some of the kind of startup kids, and they are maybe in their mid to late 20s. And they say to me, well, Portia, I've got my life ahead of me. I've got 2 startups on the go. I've got about a third one I'm going to start tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. after I've finished my rowing and my running. And I really just do not have time because I go to bed at 2 o'clock. Is this play really, really necessary? Because if not, I've already scoped it. Yeah? So the thing is it okay for you to play? Well, it's entirely up to each of us to give ourselves permission. So this is my friend Robbie. He teaches clown lessons for a living, and I met him in a wonderful conference called Counterplay, which is run in Aarhus in Denmark, and the next one is actually 2019. So if you would like to experience pure play with adults who are free spirits, then I would genuinely encourage you to go to that. That's Counterplay in Denmark. I met Robbie, and you can't see it here because the picture is so small, but what he did was, for his business cards, he created permission cards to play. The writing says, "You may." Yeah. So we could just, for a moment, take out a virtual pen and paper and write down on that card for yourself, "You may," and put that in the pocket. Yeah. That's really, really important because very often when we are under stress, not in this lovely setting where we've been well fed and watered and not feeling threatened, we very quickly devalue and deprioritize play. So, what is play? Dr. Stuart Brown wrote a great book on play. He's done a TED Talk on it, and he defines play as follows. Play is seemingly purposeless. This is very, very important to emphasize. So whenever I've asked people about this, they say, well, it should be like just pure play, there's no purpose. But imagine you've had a hard day's work. You get home and you think, you know what, I am just going to watch the whole box set of, I don't know, Game of Thrones or ER or whatever's on trend here in Greece. And your partner comes in and they go, what are you doing, darling? And you go, nothing, I'm just trying to de-stress. Ah, well, there is your purpose. Yeah, so that's the thing. Play appears seemingly purposeless. It's voluntary as well. It shouldn't be forced. And like I said, if you were forced, it would be punishment. It's also inherently attractive. So I've developed various strategies to survive in my commute in London. One of the things I do now, ever since having a child, and my little girl's 5, is now when I go on my commute in London, I deliberately seek out parents with children. And that's particularly a crazy thing to do on a Monday morning, you might say to me. But anyway, nonetheless, I go for it. And when I spot them, it's not like a creepy thing I do. I kind of just go into the carriage. I make sure they're on safe. And I kind of just stand next to them and I'll, smile at the child. Now, here's a random fact for you, right? Did you know the first muscle that a small baby can very easily manipulate is their tongue? Yeah? And that's why you can communicate with the child by sticking out your tongue. And if you do that with a child, you create a connection instantaneously. Right? Because they're learning how to feed, they can manage the tongue, right? Whereas as society, we've told them, no, put that tongue away. You're not allowed to stick your tongue out. Yeah, and that was never their intent. But anyway, that's how I play with the children. And of course, the mothers feel validated because they're kind of like really under stress in case their small child breaks out into, a long tear-sobbed cry, disturbing the whole carriage. But as I play with the child and the chat to the mum, everyone sort of, the tension just melts away a little bit. Everyone's like, it's okay. She stabilized the child bomb. It's fine. It's fine. I just need this. Next stop's my station anyway, But I think that's the key thing. If you embrace play and seek it, then you can actually be in much more control of it and enjoy it. So it's attractive. Time flies by when you're having fun, doesn't it? And it reduces your sense of self-consciousness. So instead of worrying what your hair looks like, did you brush your teeth? Oh God, what's everyone going to think about the story I didn't finish yesterday? The thing with play is it actually forces you to set aside judgment. You can't be judgmental when you're playing, and you can't worry about what other people think about you either. And it's really an opportunity for improvisation. You get very creative when you're playful. Some of the best people I play with, they may be perceived as doing not enough work, but we're going to come back to the topic of work. But that's the thing, right? Improvisation is really your brain on fire. It's your brain playing. And last but not least, there is a desire to keep going. So what I strongly encourage with play is sustainable pace. So just as you wouldn't want to do binge gaming or binge chocolate eating or even binge yoga, no more should you do binge playing. So what is play really? At this point, you're all going to say to me, well, but Portia, you haven't quite defined it. It's a bit rubbishy, isn't it? We have to realize here is even with the subject of intelligence, there are at the moment at least 70 definitions of intelligence. So since that's been around for a lot longer in terms of research, how can we expect there to only be one? So I thought I'd have a go anyway, nonetheless, like the challenge. So I've come up with 3 words. It's fun, it's flexible, and it's freely chosen. So however you like to play, and that's entirely up to you, and you hopefully will know best, then is to remember, is it fun? Is it flexible? And is it freely chosen? Okay. So, why do we play? So it shapes an organism's brain. There's a lot of research on this. In fact, typically when experts are prone to quarreling and disagreeing, the biologists, the neuroscientists, the psychologists, and even the social scientists agree on these points, right? It makes animals smarter and more adaptable. It enables us to build social relationships. If you ask kind of really well-informed parents, not just well-meaning, but well-informed parents, they will tell you not only do they wish the children to be happy, but they wish the children to be surrounded by people who love them back. And that starts with social relationships. And of course, it fuels creativity and innovation. So in America, where a lot of this happens, a lot of exciting things happen in America, don't they? They did an experiment on a group of rats. They took a group of rats and split it into 2. The first group of rats, they allowed to play. I can come back to how they knew that. And then the second group of rats weren't allowed to play. So I have done my secondary research on this. And it turns out that that a rat is delighted and therefore playing is when you pick them up and you tickle them under the chin. And then they kind of emit this delighted squeak, not a horrifying one, but just a lovely little squeak, and that's how you know they were playing. 2 groups of rat, 1 group that played, the other one that didn't. So in this experiment, before I continue, how many of you have heard this example before? Oh, excellent. So no spoilers, please. So in this experiment then, there's a room, there's a mouse hole, and there's a cat. So they release the group of mice, both groups, and then they release a cat. What happens to the first group, those who played? They run away, yeah, they went into the hole, yep. Second group, the group who hadn't played. Show again? They played with the cat, yeah, that would really be dicing with death. Now, very fortunately, our survival instinct is so strong that it's not something you need to practice. Good news for most of us driving. So the non-played rats also scurried into the hole, right? Because it's a survival instinct. Now, what happens next is more interesting. Then they take the cat away. What does the first group do? Oh yeah, they play, and they come back out. They do. What about the second group? They stayed in the hole, and they never left the hole again. Yeah, and we have a lot to learn from nature, don't we? And that is the value of playing. In fact, they have done research where a child, and this was because of circumstances in a certain country, where they found that if, as a child between the ages of 0 and 5, you didn't have enough affectionate touch, so things like hugs, and enough play, your brain could be up to 30% smaller than what it could potentially be. Yeah, that is the power of play. So now the next thing I'd like to ask you is, when was the last time you played at work? So if you can all stand up. You don't need anything else. Great, thank you. For those of you who leapt up, very nimble, I'm glad the warm-up worked. So you can all stand up. Right, are you ready? So, if you played in the last month before this conference at work, stay standing. Okay. Right, keep your eyes out for the ones who are still standing, right? That's the game. If you played at work in the last week before this conference, stay standing. Okay, now have a really good look around the room. And if you played at work before coming to the conference this week, so that was yesterday, stay standing. Okay. So don't be shy. Have a good stare at the people who are standing, because these are the people you want to buy beers for afterwards, right? To figure out how they're doing it. Okay, great. Grab a seat. So being a play researcher, I have to obviously come up with these models, right? Because that's what researchers do, apparently. So I came up with this modest model, and the key thing is models aren't reality. They simply represent what reality could be in a simplified way. So along the x-axis, I've plotted the desire to play, and then along the y-axis is the know-how. And then I started observing the adults around me, right? And I noticed 4 particular preferences. So these aren't labels and states that you stay permanently in. They're simply preferences, and it depends on your context as well. They can change depending if you're at work, if you're at home, if you're at your tennis club. So the first one is that there are those who can play, so they know how, and they want to play. So they are the ones who at lunchtime, out the door, and they might be going for, I don't know, a brisk walk to the favorite restaurant, which they're going to then buy the lunch and then go to the park and then feed the birds, and they've got it all sorted. And you're going to want to go with them, right? So those are the type ones. And the second type of preference is those who can't play, but if they see that person jump out of their seat and they know exactly where they're going, they're like, oh my God, can I come with you to get that sandwich? I totally forgot mine today. And then they kind of hide the sandwich they brought, right? So those are the type 2s. They can't play, but they want to play. Then you have the type 3s, those who can play, but they won't play. Typically, what you will see this is in the workplace is, Well, you know, work is very important. Can you not see the corporate ladder just there leaning against my wall? I am here to achieve. If I wanted to play, then I will be defeating everybody else at the golf tournament that I go to this weekend. Yeah? I'll play then, but I'm not going to play at work, because play is just far too childish for the purposes of achievement at work. Now, how wrong can they be? Type 4 are those who can't play and won't play. So they're typically people who don't know how, or in fact, they never learned how to play in their childhood. Yeah? And that's probably why they won't play. I think that's the thing to be really, really sensitive about. And I don't know what it is, but I think I'm like a taboo magnet, so that when I think, oh God, there's something that cannot be spoken here, if people go, oh well, Portia, we've got an elephant in the room between two teams, I'm like, great, let's just pull off the sheet then. Because until we acknowledge what's there, we cannot understand it, and therefore we cannot grow and embrace it and move on, right? And that's why, as a play researcher, I was surprised at how divisive the topic of play is. When I tell people I am interested in play and I'm a play researcher, some people will go, great, so I do this, what other suggestions have you got, how do you define play, blah, blah, blah. And then there'll be other people who just go like, I'm not talking to her, I'm absolutely fine, I play plenty, thank you very much, I'm just not doing it right now, you know, stay away kind of thing. So I think that's really worthwhile, being self-aware of your response to the topic of play. So what's the opposite of play? Go on, don't be shy. What's the opposite of play? Work, great, thank you for getting the elephant there. What else? Sleep. Rest. Routine. Static, was it? Study, oh yeah. What else? Boredom. Stress. Let's do one more. One more? Unhappiness, fear, great. So imagine a world where there are no movies, no music, no stories, no jokes, no fantasies, no dreams. What are we left with? Well, the good news is, according to Dr. Stuart Brown, work isn't the opposite of play, so you don't need to be typing out your resignation letter as we speak. That's the good news. And in fact, he actually says that play leads to creativity and innovation. All these slides will be available in Creative Commons. So creativity and innovation, which in turn lead to invention and growth. All pretty good stuff, right? And I know some of you will nod at me and go, oh, but we know all this. In which case I'd ask, well, why don't we do that in the workplace then? And what about work? Well, work apparently also leads to creativity and innovation. And more importantly, it leads to purpose and competence. Yeah? So they're not opposites, they're complementary. And in spite of being Chinese, I didn't realize this, but somebody somewhere had already codified the relationship of work to our lives. Because in Chinese, the word's work is sang yi, which literally translates to meaning of life. Isn't that interesting? Meaning of life. So the answer was right in front of us, but sometimes we still overlook it. It's like that warning on the smoking packets, you know, it's that sort of thing. You know, it's right in front of you. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do is show you what work actually looks like. So, right, keep your eyes peeled because this is going to be rapid. You're not getting the video. No video. Oh, but look, I've just watched it all by myself. That is no way to play, is it? No video? Okay, it's okay. I will tweet it. Let's be flexible. So what happens there is actually Emily Fox is a young American lady, and what she's done is she's gone and let's just zip through here. she wins a competition of stacking cups. So some of you might have seen this. And basically, presumably, she spends all summer practicing, and then she gets the best. You heard the cheering, the best result ever. And all her friends are delighted, right? None of them are looking on envy and going, oh, she shouldn't have got that pay rise. I wanted that promotion. They were all delighted for her. And that's what you get when you use play as a catalyst for change within your team, right? It's about celebrating success. So, I ask again, what is the opposite of play? Not play. Oh, I like that. Exclamation mark play. Okay. Not play. Come on, let's do two more. Two more guesses. Unhappiness. Okay. Fear. Boredom. Okay. So I came across Dr. Stuart Brown's book, whilst I was in Chicago, and I read the book cover to cover whilst I was on the plane back to the UK, and I nearly fell out of my seat, right, when I came across this kind of broad statement. I think the key thing here is he's simply comparing it here. He's not talking about the kind of clinical depression we're talking about, right? And what I've noticed when he says, the opposite of play is depression, is that it's quite easy then to map on the different types I've showed you. So for example, those who can play and want to play, they're pretty far away from the red line, right? Because they figure it out. When they realize they're kind of, I'm about to go to that dark place, I best go for a walk or go for a run or do something fun with my friends tonight. And for those who are more into work, they can't play, want to play, they're still pretty clear of the red line. But those who tend to have the preference in more of the contexts, more of the time, the can play and won't plays are much closer to the state of depression, right? And I remember when I first found this out, me and elephants, I'm like, I have to tell the world, because this is much better than taking medication, isn't it? So I went and told one of my friends, Pete, who's a great techie, and I said, Pete, look, you'll never guess what? They reckon that the opposite of play is depression. What do you think? And of course, the sick and twisted part of me is like watching his face to see a reaction. And he goes, oh, that's great. I was like, well, what bit of it is it great? He goes, well, now I know what to do if I ever get close to that red line. And I thought, what a practical way of responding to some useful information. Okay, so why should adults play? It turns out it's for all the same reasons that children should. So the first thing is it breaks down barriers between people. And that's why I do icebreakers, and you can do that with one-to-one, one-to-many, in groups, right? Play a card game, do some kind of interactive exercise, and it just lowers the bar of entry and increases the sense of trust among people. It opens your mind again to enable learning. And it opens the heart to create a connection. It's a source of joy, and it's a source of hope. So here you see pictures I've gathered them over the years. So anything with balloons is based on the XP game, created by two of my favorite Belgians, Pascal and Vera. So it's xpgame.be. And I've been using their game in various versions with people in all sorts of industries, and it doesn't matter. They're typically delighted to be blowing balloons. And by the end of our day or two together, they're working well as a team, even if it's just for that period, and they're celebrating, right, what work could feel like. And I remember running this course once, and after a manager took part, bless him, he stayed with us for the whole 2 days. Afterwards, he said, so Portia, I've never seen my teams this happy ever. In fact, I've never seen Jeff smile. So how do we kind of get more of this into our daily work, right? Because remember, play is naturally attractive. And that led me to kind of make another observation, which is people who play together stay together. And the last time I gave this talk in, I think it was Sweden, one gentleman turned to his friend next to him and gave him a hug. And I thought, oh, what a lovely thing to do. Because that's the thing, right? If you're not enjoying or doing something enjoyable together with the person you spend a lot of time with, and in fact, did you know that we spend more than 70% of our waking hours doing work or work-related activities? That's more time than we will ever spend with our loved ones in a lifetime. And that's why it's so important to enjoy the company of our colleagues, no? So, your recommended daily amount of play then. Dr. Stuart Brown says about 5 to 10 minutes is enough a day. 1 day of play lasts up to a week, so you can see the benefit of play at the weekend. And it's about little and often. And I mentioned about the binge playing because it's about sustainable pace, because then you can keep playing rather than burn yourself out. So that takes us nicely to part 2 of the brain. So who here has heard of Professor Steve Peters? Raise your hand. Okay, so he is the in-house psychiatrist for Britain's Pro Sky cycling team. And in the last Olympics in London, because of his chimp model, which is the way of thinking and interacting with our brains, the Brits brought home 12 Olympic medals, 8 of which were gold, right? So there's something in this that might be worth paying attention to. So before we continue, I'd like you to just take a moment and think about a time, in the sort of near past, so something that happened recently, where you thought to yourself, oh, I regretted saying or doing that. So just take a moment to think about that. Okay. So bear that in mind. According to Dr. Steve Peters, then, he has split the brain into 7 parts. This is very simple, and it is just a model. But the key thing he wants to highlight are 3 parts of the brain. The limbic part, which he calls the chimp, the frontal part, which he calls the human, and then the parietal, which is what he calls the computer. Now, it's really funny, but it's still not common knowledge that all information that we receive, all input, all external input, goes through the chimp first. So it's no wonder that we are emotional creatures. We respond emotionally first because that's where the information arrives. And then after that, the chimp might go, okay, what am I going to do next? And if it's feeling particularly nervous, it will look quickly in the computer, which is where your habits, your prejudices, the way you think life works, it's all pre-programmed in there. Look in there and see, what's happened the last time someone cut me up in the car? Did I do a rude physical gesture with my 5-year-old in the car, or did I choose not to? What worked last time? And when the chimp calms down, it will then pass the input to the human. So the key thing here, what Dr. Steve Peters says, is that remember, you can't wrestle the information from your chimp because it's 5 times stronger than the human. There's no controlling it or tricking it. There's none of that. And more importantly, he says that the chimp isn't you. He says the chimp is just simply the oldest part of you that has evolved over time, and as it developed in your brain as you were growing as an embryo in your mum's tummy, that it grew separately to the frontal part and the other parts of your brain, and when it connected and they met each other, they disagreed on the way they responded to information. However, nonetheless, it is still part of you, so it's a bit like owning a dog. So whilst you can't be responsible for the dog's personality, you need to make sure you keep it under control and it doesn't accidentally bite your grandmother, for example, right? And he says that's the way to think about our brain. So embrace the human, but know that the chimp is very powerful and recognize it. So how does that resonate with the example I asked you to bring to mind about the last time you did or said something you regretted? So one of the key things is to say, well, you know what? That was my chimp. It wasn't me. But nonetheless, I apologize for my chimp. So how can we play with that a bit? So I want to sort of see how smart our brains really are. So as the next exercise, I'd like you to cast your mind back to your childhood, because of course we start playing very early on. And for those of us who were lucky enough to know about the tongue trick, you would have been playing very quickly after you were first born. So I'd like you to think about your favorite childhood toy. And now turn to someone you haven't met yet and just share with them your memory of that childhood toy. Take a couple of minutes. Go. Okay, so thank you for playing. I'd like you now just to take a moment to reflect on that and think about how are you feeling now after you've thought about that childhood memory toy and before. So how do you feel now compared to before doing the exercise? Shout out some words. Nostalgic? Happy? More relaxed? Safe? Joyful, playful, anything else? What was that? Nice. Emotional. Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing with our brains. It can't distinguish between actually what's happening and what's a memory. So what if we were to embrace our chimp, right? Embrace our emotions and embrace the way our brain works and actually play with it by treating it occasionally to happy memories. And one of the really effective ways of doing this that I saw witness was one time I was working with a bunch of teams, and it was very late at night, and they just done a deploy into production, and you know the build takes forever, and then they deploy. And as they were waiting, and it was getting late, there was a Rubik's Cube on one of the prod guys' team doing the release. He had the Rubik's Cube. So the developer went, "Oh yeah, I had one of those when I was little. Oh, I remember I had it. Yeah, I could do it in like less than a minute. It was brilliant. And now I've taught my child how to do that, and then she's taught her brother how to do that. So we do a family thing, and we do like a family trick, but I guess we could do it on YouTube or something, you know. And then the other guy goes, "Oh yeah, that's the one from my childhood." Right? And they start talking about this, and then a few moments later, the release is done, gone into prod, and they run the test, and it's all good, right? And I think the key thing here is to recognize, even just talking and reminiscing a bit about something that you were joyful about in the past allows people to have a shared moment. And the key thing about play is about creating a connection, right? And really fundamentally, that's what got me into my play research, as I realized over time. It's about restoring the humanity we feel for others and ourselves. Because when we're under stress and our chimp is going crazy, I don't care about you. I'm too busy surviving, right? Because that's what the chimp cares about. It cares about sex, it cares about food, and it cares about staying alive. It certainly doesn't care about you. It cares about me, yeah? But when we're in a playful mood, all of a sudden we're able to be compassionate, non-judgmental, resilient, calm, mindful, all these things we get for free, and that's how we do change effectively. So instead of merely boxing your chimp or putting it away, what I suggest is that have fun with it. So here are some ideas. Name your chimp. So just take a moment. I'm not joking. Take a moment and just acknowledge your chimp, and maybe a name will pop up in your head. I won't ask you to share, but if a name popped up in your head for your chimp, raise your hand. I know, it's like a magic trick, isn't it? Wow. So my chimp's name's Charlie, which is interesting. It just popped up. And so sometimes on certain days it's a girl, and other days it's a boy, and it just lets me know it's there, which is fascinating. So naming the chimp is really, really important, because I actually do this trick with my little girl. And the great thing with the chimp model, it's so easy to understand. So if you just hold your hand up, any hand will do, and you fold your thumb in, yeah? So that is your amygdala, your limbic system. This is your chimp. Now wrap your fingers over it. That is your prefrontal cortex. That is your human. Yeah? So by doing this, I can get my 5-year-old to visualize her brain and know where her brain is. You can put your fist down now, but you might want to just hold on to play with that. Because one of the techniques I've started experimenting with is actually stroking your forehead to send blood flow from your amygdala into your prefrontal cortex, raising awareness and actually de-stressing yourself. This is a real thing, right? I think, and that's what science and psychology is showing us. And I do this with my 5-year-old. So for example, I take her shopping, it's near the end of the month, she's spent her budget for games and toys, and she doesn't necessarily realize or understand that. So we're in the shopping center, and she'll say, "Mummy, I'd really like this My Little Pony. It's great. Look at all the things it does." I mean, she's 5 now, so she's getting a bit salesy. "Look, it does this. You can brush its hair, you know, and I can take it out to the restaurant with us, and I can play with it whilst you and Daddy chat." So she's done all this. Great. I encourage her to be resourceful. And I'll say to her, look, Emma, we've reached the end of the budget. I did tell you before we came out that today we're just coming to get school socks. So it's not for toys. At this point, what happens, right? So, she starts kind of trying to do the teary thing, which I get, and it might be genuine tears. She starts getting really upset, and she goes, Mommy! I said, I know. And meanwhile, I'm trying to breathe, calm down my chimp, because I'm thinking, oh my God, the world is judging me, thinking I'm a terrible mother for not providing my child with a pony that she really needs, clearly. Oh my God, I'm terrible with neglect. And so whilst I'm trying to calm down my chimp, she's going, oh my God, Mommy, and I say, Emma, who's in control right now? She goes, my chimp, Mommy. Great, because awareness is the first step. And did you know that the remarkable thing about human beings is that when we're self-aware and we realize what's better for us, we will naturally adapt our behavior towards that thing that is better for us. Anyway, so she goes, my chimp, Mommy. And I can see she's still overwhelmed from emotions. And instead of kind of keeping it all in and getting cancer or heart disease later on in her life, or maybe psychiatric bills, I say to her, go on then, Emma. So she'll lie on the floor. I make sure it's clear. It's obviously public space. It's not near escalators. I don't want to have to use my pediatric first aid skills. So she's on the floor, and she's kind of doing a little kick. I'm like, yeah, okay, go ahead. So she does this. I'm stood there, and like parents are judging me. Yeah, I'm okay. It's all right, chimp. It's okay, Charlie. Just chill out. She's doing her thing with her chimp. So when she's finished, she stands up. She goes, Mummy. I said, how's it going, darling? She goes, oh, but my chimp just really... I know. I said, who would you like to be in control, Emma? She goes, my human. I said, yeah, I know, me too. So then she says, okay. She takes a few deep breaths, and she goes, okay, Mummy, the human's back. I'm ready to go home now. And this is how remarkable. So I think, wow, if it works for children, it must work with adults. And that's why emotional intelligence and playing with this model is so useful. And when you know the name, you can externalize that thing, and you can better deal with it. So spot your chimp. So when you're in your meeting and you start doodling and almost using a bar to jab the pad to death because you're thinking, why am I here? This is a waste of my life. Instead, just greet your chimp by name, in your head probably, rather than calling it out in the meeting, because that might take you elsewhere. Just say, you know what, Charlie? Do you want to just nip to the loo? Yes, please. Okay. Yeah? And I think this is the thing. I think managing your emotions doesn't have to be a heavy, terrible thing if you make it fun. Another thing to do is play with your chimp. So like that memory exercise we did, or do special treats. Doing crazy acts of kindness, or singing in the office all of a sudden, starting a ukulele club at work. Do whatever it is, right? That tickles your chimp in a safe space that doesn't harm anybody else would be a good thing. So let your chimp play, because your chimp loves playing. And nurture your chimp. Really, really look after it. Yeah, it's important to play little and often and love your chimp. Because instead of splitting it off from who we really are, and then that goes into the shadow part of your brain, and it's no good because then it comes up later on to bite you, literally. It's better to integrate your whole self, your chimp and your human. You can be both of those things and enjoy that. So let's have a look at your play future. We're almost at the end. So before we look at the future, it's really important to understand the history of play. So between sort of 476 AD and 1500, I don't know how they did this research. The idea was that play was basically evil, right? It was not allowed, it was frowned upon. I'm sure shame and loathing was heaped on it. And then in 1700, John Locke, one of the British philosophers, decided that it was really important to say beating our children in schools is not acceptable. Yeah? He had to say that. He had to write a treatise about it, and not everyone agreed. Then in 1825, the son of a sea biscuit manufacturing company, the son came up with the ideas of the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Do you have something here like this in Greece? No? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. So that's still very pervasive in kind of British education. And if you weren't good at reading, writing, and arithmetic, and this was still the case when I was at school many years ago, then you sucked and you were stupid. Yeah? Wow, what a self-limiting assumption that is. That's just wiped out at least most of the boys after 10, right? Because they're busy, the brains, oh my goodness, like teenagers' brains are busy rewiring. And that's why they say things like, I hate you, when in fact they go, I love you, but my chimp is just going mental. Yeah, they can't tell you this because they don't know about it, right? So those are the 3 R's. And I think the thing is we've had a really outdated view of human intelligence for far too long. And in spite of it being well known in the education circles, even the teachers don't practice it themselves. And I think that's why raising awareness is so important. So fortunately, in 1916, a Frenchman came up with the idea of IQ, measuring intelligence, and it was never his intent to use it the way we do of beating people up to say, you're a bit crappy because your IQ is lower than John and he's going to get the bonus and you're not. Yeah? And of course, hurrah, Lego was invented in 1932, and I think things start getting good for the story of play. Now, in 1983, Dr. Howard Gardner came up with this idea of multiple intelligences, which we're going to look at now. And it's much more than your 3 R's of looking at how we measure intelligence in people. So you'll be familiar with things like logic smart, right? Being logical, writing algorithms, programs. Word smart, yeah? So being able to read, write, express yourself. Nature smart, being able to grow. Let's being able to grow a sunflower from a sunflower seed. How many people here can do that? Raise your hand. Right? So if it were easy, we'd all be able to do that, but mine go moldy every time. So that's another form of intelligence. What about picture smart? People who are able to visualize a universe in their heads, right? Programmers are very picture smart, visual thinkers. Music smart, Captain Corelli's mandolin, right? The writer of that book, he can just pick up any instrument. I've seen this done on stage. Literally, people pass him instruments he has never, ever seen. He picks it up, twiddles with it, and then starts playing a tune. And you're like, wow, how do you do this? Another form of intelligence. Then we have body smart. People who are very aware of when they're not feeling well. Children are very good with this. Yeah, they are still in tune and aware of their intelligences. Until about the age of 5 or 6, when it's basically taken out of them through their education system, possibly through parenting, possibly through the adults around them who tell them, well, you can't sing anymore, and you can't trust how you feel. I'll tell you how you feel. Yeah. And then there's people smart, being really good with understanding how someone else is feeling. Yeah. And then there's the last one, which I glossed over here, which is self-smart, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, self-management, absolutely essential and vital. So for those of you who are particularly good at retrospectives and looking at how you can improve, tick. That is a form of intelligence. And now you can go back to your teams to tell you this, that you weren't just simply being critical, right? But that you are exercising a very important intelligence. So after 1983, we had emotional intelligence. In 1990, and it gets better. So then Dr. Stuart Brown, we're almost near the end, Dr. Stuart Brown wrote the book on play, and even he struggled to get funding to do play research in spite of it being so well known and beneficial. And in fact, the reason he spotted the importance of play, did you know, was because he was working in prisons with high-risk people in there, and he realized the recurring theme amongst most of those people in those prisons, the particularly high-risk ones, had a direct correlation. So the higher risk they were, the more violent they were, the less likely they played in their childhood. Yeah. So you remember your brain being 30% smaller if you didn't play enough or had enough affectionate touch between the ages of 0 and 5. So that's why he got into his research. And then in 2014, someone came up with this idea of play IQ. And I still remember the night a few years ago when I thought, well, hang on a minute. If there is IQ and there's EQ, there must be play IQ. And at this point, I let myself feel smug for about 30 seconds because I knew that the moment I put it into Google, someone would tell me that someone had already discovered it, right? So I thought, no, let's just warm my kind of cockles of my heart on a Friday evening. I've been working hard at this. And lo and behold, a chap called Dr. James Findlay, a Scotsman who lives in Scandinavia now, came up with a theory about play IQ. And it is this. He said, what if play intelligence is the foundation of all the other intelligences? And in fact, based on Dr. Howard Gardner's work, there's much more than 8 now. There are many, many more types of intelligences. But going back to this play intelligence, Dr. Findlay says, actually, if intelligence is thought and play is motor, skills, movement, then play is both of those things, right? Because it's thought and movement. And that's the theory of play intelligence, the foundation of all of these. And I think this is what gave me hope to carry on. And the more I've observed, the more I've used this in my work, the more easy the change has been, both for me taming my own chimp and entertaining it when times get rough in the agile transformations, but also enabling people to be at their best and managing their own chimps. So in 2016, I started the School of Play, where we look at helping adults, teams, develop that so that they can apply play intelligence to their daily work. And for most people looking on, it just looks like they're having a great time at work, and no one else understands why they're enjoying work so much, right? That's the key thing for the people looking on. So what does lifelong learning look like? So this is one of the events I ran in London called the Curiosity Carousel, where we look at identifying your multiple intelligences. So here we're making bracelets out of loom bands. You can see a bunch of adults really, really engaged. And curiously, it's actually aligned to the play cycle, which is very close to the learning cycle. So there's the moment of anticipation. So I'm showing a friend here how to do the bracelet. So he's like, okay, this is slightly harder than what I thought it would be. And then my friend here, Paul, who's like surprised at quite how hard it is. You can see from his furrowed brow. Then Will here is starting to really enjoy himself. You know, okay, I get this. And then understanding, so another friend here, Alyssa, she's going, oh yeah, this is a bit like knitting, isn't it? But just with rubber bands. And then you see progress here, mastery, and they're helping each other learn. And last but not least, you can see the ladies here actually modeling their loom bands as well, right? And that's poise, thinking, I think I get this now. And that's exactly what the learning cycle looks like as well, and it's based on the play process. So the reason we play is the way we've always learned, and it's only because we choose to stop doing that or feel like we're not allowed that we've stopped learning, right? So I'd like to do one more thought experiment with you. So for those of you who are very visual, and by the way, 70% of people apparently are very visual, so if you wish to close your eyes, you may, and we're not going to pull any tricks on you, so don't worry about that. So close your eyes if you wish, or keep your eyes wide open. I'm just going to read this out and try to visualize this in your mind's eye. So, your play future. Suppose tonight, while you slept, a miracle happened. When you awake tomorrow, what would be some of the things you would notice that would tell you that your life had suddenly become more playful? So take a moment and then turn to a different neighbor and share with them what you see is your play future. Go. Okay, you guys are doing really well. It's been a super long day. Okay, so could you, some of you just shout out, how would you know when your life has become more playful? Who'd like to share? Your kids will be happier. Anything else? You see more opportunities for fun. More bright colors around. No one will. No one will judge you. Yeah, you don't feel judged. That is such a liberating feeling when you can be in that kind of environment.
When the neighbor's dog stops barking.
Right, when the neighbor's dog stops barking. Maybe you can offer to walk it. No, yeah, indeed. The dog will have fun, won't it? Let's do two more. Come on, two more. Relaxed? Mm-hmm. Happier mood? See good things. Is that right? Yep. See good in all things. And That's how you know you're playing enough. For those of you who were still able to do this exercise, I know it's been a super long day, and I've actually trimmed my talk to only 30 minutes. But for those of you who were still able to do this exercise, it's likely that you've quite playful because you found the resource to do that. So well done. Great. Was there a couple more? Smile. Yeah, because it's funny that what is the shortest distance between two people? It is a smile. Absolutely. Okay? Let's do one more. Come on. Attitude toward problems. Yeah. So it's not just about the use of language and people go, I don't see obstacles, I see opportunities. You think, oh my God, what's he had for breakfast? This is clearly terrible. People should not be working here. No. So this is the thing, right? It is about reprogramming our brains, right? But also aligning it with what we want. So, George Bernard Shaw, a famous English playwright, he said many wise things, and he said you can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. I'll leave you to be the judge of that. So, to summarize, play for your life. The opposite of play is depression. The recommended daily amount of play is 10 to 15 minutes, but feel free to play more. Don't limit yourself. I've played so much, so you're going to play again tomorrow, and you're going to be all set for next week. Play with your chimp. Let it out often. Play more at home and at work. And in fact, if you find that you're not playing enough at work, start at home and then bring that into work, or vice versa, right? And then develop your play intelligence little and often. And I'd be delighted if one day that I see play intelligence on people's CV, I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? And they give you tests to test how creative you are. Wow, I mean, fantastic. And all play, of course. So here's the treasure trove. I'll upload this to SlideShare, and do share it with your friends, family, and colleagues under Creative Commons. So let's just do a quick acceptance test. As a play seeker or play skeptic, I need ideas on how to play more so that we can all live happily ever after. If you agree, raise your hand. I have a working knowledge of play. Okay. I can explain the importance of play. Okay. I have one or more ideas to play more. Oh, fantastic. And I've had fun. Woohoo! Okay. So, the last thing I want to leave with you from George again is we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. Thank you for playing. Thank you.
Alrighty, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Portia. Let's take a couple of questions before we wrap up for the day. Yeah.
Thank you, Portia. That was a great talk. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I'm fortunate enough to work in a company which is very play-friendly. But I'm wondering your opinion if this is an issue or not. The way that we play is always competitive. So all the games that are there tend to be competing against each other. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they say true play is fair play, safe play, and being a good sport. And I think if we talk about competition, just ask the professional athletes, who do you think they're competing against? That's right. And that was always the intention of the idea of competition. But I guess as usual, we've come along and we've bastardized it and manipulated to our own gains, right? And I think that's the thing to look at. I think getting people to compete in a combative way is negative. You wouldn't ask children to do this, so why would you ask adults to? So you might want to challenge them to rethink what they really mean by play. Indeed. Mm-hmm. People are ready to go. All good?
Portia, ευχαριστώ.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for playing. Well done. Well done.